All right. Hey, everybody. How's it going? Thanks for stopping by. This is our weekly Wednesday night live stream. I'm here with Brianna. We're excited to talk with you all. One thing before we start. It is extremely hot, as maybe people realize, for those in, like, central Canada, in a certain part of the United States right now. We have the air conditioning on. Let us know if you're hearing that, if it's bothering you guys. If it is, we'll turn it off. If it's not, we won't sweat to death. So let us know. But be honest with us. Don't feel bad. We could turn it off. We can always maybe rotate it or what have you. We have that right there. Tonight, as always, we're going to be here to probably about 10:15 or so. Talking about all manner of politics, largely taking your guys' questions. I want to touch a little bit on the Tucker Carlson, event last night and how troubling it was, how he's been targeting Ilhan Omar and Tammy Duckworth, both women politicians, both racialized women politicians, basically questioning their loyalty to America. One being an immigrant, and immigrants, of course, are, if anything, more loyal. They have to actually choose the country. And Tammy Duckworth being a veteran and, and somebody who paid a physical price for her country. Mm-hmm. She's an amputee as a result of her service, right? Doesn't automatically make her a good person, but it's hard to question her patriotism, right? Yep. And of course, I want to talk a bit about the Biden-Bernie task force. They've released some of the details on their task forces, and there is a good tweet thread by a Bernie Sanders supporter who sat on the healthcare committee that I want to read, and I want to talk it over with you guys, because I really am sort of torn. I mean, I don't trust Biden by any means, but, there is this effort to kind of portray this as a positive step forward. But I want to kind of balance being not too skeptical or not too cynical, but maintaining healthy skepticism. Because as we saw in my video earlier today, go and check it out after the live stream if you haven't yet. Joe Biden continues to reject Medicare for all, despite the fact that it's perfectly reasonable. People saying it's not bothering them?
No, it's good.
Okay. People not hearing it. I hear it on my recordings, on my recordings, but I wonder if the audio quality is higher when you're doing it on a recording and it picks it up. Okay.
Dan Cordovan says where he lives in Nova Scotia and it's 15 degrees here.
Jeez, that's perfect right now.
So perfect.
15 degrees, you can do whatever you want. Like, you can throw on a light sweater. You could, put on a t-shirt. That's perfect weather, I think. Well, at least right now.
Yep.
In the winter, you're like, oh God, I just can't wait for some hot days.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a bit about those things, but let's talk a bit about let's take some.
Well, let's go to the super chats.
Yeah, let's go to the super chats. Yeah.
Okay, so our first one is from Samantha Sider. Which is worse, coronavirus or coronavirus?
I mean, it's definitely the second, right? It has to be. I mean, as bad as the Karens are, and they are. Don't get me wrong. One is ravaging the entire world, and the other one just ravages, white Western European countries, right? You know what I mean? In addition...
I think what she's actually asking is what's worse, the, social problems that we have or the global pandemic.
Oh, well, that's an interesting... If we're talking, the broader context...
The society that gave birth to the Karen problem.
Yeah, I mean, then that's a bigger debate. On the one hand, you could certainly argue that, we've never dealt with anything like this current pandemic. We haven't. It's unprecedented in modern human history. I mean, the closest thing has to be, of course, this.
Can you just put it back?
Yeah, the Spanish flu in the. Oh, did we lose the connection?
I'm not sure.
I don't think we did.
No, we're good.
I'm not sure. We might have lost it here, but it's resetting here. But the closest thing I would say would be the Spanish flu. Did you lose?
Maybe.
Oh. Somebody says Karen's attacked the stream, so there must have been some kind of Conca. That's weird, guys, because
Okay, I think we're back.
yeah, looking at our bit rate, it seemed fine on our program. So we'll keep an eye on that. But thanks for letting us know. I definitely noticed a dip in the amount of people watching. People are back, though, it looks like, so that's good. But no, I mean, the Spanish flu was the last thing that was this big.
Yeah.
And the world wasn't, and the world, I mean, the world was connected at the moment because of all the soldiers and stuff going back from the Great War, but we've not dealt with anything like this in North America, at least. I mean, the original SARS in certain parts of Asia was really bad, but I mean, there's still nothing compared to this in terms of the widespread nature. It's just we've not dealt with anything like this before. We've not dealt with anything like this before, at all. And so yeah, that's certainly the case. But although there's the timeless plague of intolerance and prejudice and racism, right? And I do think that's a bigger deal. I do. Day-to-day basis, it might not get the headlines as much, but whether in or beyond Canada and the United States, it's something that affects people in direct, very immediate, very tragic ways, like with George Floyd, or sometimes through much more smaller, more periodic microaggressions and things of that sort. So, yeah, I gotta go with, if it's, racism versus, this pandemic, then, yeah, racism's still a bigger deal. Yeah. One thing to quickly note, I don't know if you guys talk about Karens, San Francisco, I believe city councilor, I don't know if that's the terminology they use, city councilor is proposing new legislation called the Karen Act, and it's spelt Caren, because it's an acronym. I forget what it stands for, and it's basically there to help address the phenomenon of white people falsely calling police and other law enforcement officials on people of color. Yeah. Now it's interesting because technically that's already sort of illegal. Like filing, what we see.
Filing a false police claim, or fraudulently calling 911. Those are penalties. But to use the state police force or the reporting mechanism to purposely hurt people of color, that would be something new.
Yeah, I mean that's my understanding, and so I think in terms of how you litigate it, it's going to be interesting because how do you distinct this from a more traditional, I guess, for lack of a better term, usage of the the false reporting guidelines, right? So, for instance, you say Amy Cooper, that's very clearly something that would fall under this guideline. But at the end of the day, they don't have that law there. It's just under general false reporting. But yeah, that'll be interesting to see.
Okay, Ronald 6, Wilson 6, Reagan 6.
Reagan, yeah.
Sorry. Says, sickening that Julian Assange is facing extradition while Ghislaine Maxwell is probably going to get out on bail. Lock her up. Who is that?
Okay, so this is interesting. Okay, right here. Sickening that Julian Assange is facing extradition while Ghislaine Maxwell is. Yeah, so Julian Assange is the one of the the whistleblowers.
Okay, I know who Julian.
And he's not a character without controversy. I don't think he's fully an innocent man, but fundamentally, he's certainly not an unequivocally bad person like Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't know if she's gonna get out on bail. I don't know. I'm not convinced. I actually have no clue what's going to happen there. On the one hand, she's extremely powerful and knows a lot of stuff about some awfully powerful men.
Oh, that's the girlfriend of Epstein.
Yes. So if you don't know,
just said that.
So if you don't know who she is, she was Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend / partner / co-conspirator. And something about a madam, but basically she, at least allegedly from a legal perspective, played a part in these child sex rings. I don't even know what to call it.
Child exploitation rings.
These child sex rings that men from potentially Donald Trump to Bill Clinton to Prince Andrew, like some of the world's most powerful men over the last 30 years have been on those lists. Now, of course, it doesn't necessarily mean from a legal perspective that anything happened, but we know. And we know, and like, this is the only conspiracy theory I can think of. I don't even think it's a conspiracy theory, but that like the majority of people believe there's no way Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. Guys, like, read the chat, check the chat.
Well, they said that she's not going to make it.
Yeah, there's no way Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. There's no way. There's no way. He definitely got murdered in prison. Now, was it by... who was it by? I don't know. Clinton supporters will say it's Trump. Trump supporters will say it's Clinton. I frankly think Hillary and Donald and Bill probably could bury the hatchet to get this one job done. Because it seems like if they could be united on one thing, like rich perverts could build a bipartisan consensus on silencing Jeffrey Epstein.
We're good now.
But, so my instinct, guys, is what if she doesn't make it out of the prison? She's apparently being transferred to the same prison Epstein was being held in. I wonder if in the same prison there will be another, camera malfunction combined with a guard. One other thing I think they might do, frankly, is maybe she gets COVID-19 and succumbs to COVID-19. These are all things. I don't know. I don't think she's necessarily going to get out on bail. I don't know. The one thing you might say that she could get away with this is if basically she gives up enough people to cover her ass, but none of those people are like the richest and most powerful and most influential. Like, so she doesn't give up Bill, she doesn't give up Donald, she doesn't give up Prince Andrew.
Well, this is completely like
speculation.
Speculation.
And then maybe,
as is the fact that
as is
the assertion that Epstein was murdered.
Yeah, exactly. So, from my perspective, I'm not so sure. But I do agree that's happening. And people are of different minds on this, because I've heard some people argue, well, why was she back in the United States? The whole reason she hadn't been arrested or detained or anything was because I believe she was in Israel. And I believe, like, there was all this thing about it hard to extradite her and all of these very complicated legal and diplomatic and political questions. But her coming back to the States made it relatively easy to bring her in. Mm-hmm. And so some people suggest that it was purposeful that she came back.
Check your... I think we lost people for a sec.
It looks... We're fine? It looks okay on our end. Okay. It looks okay on our end. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. Guys, if she dies in prison, I will not be surprised. I will be surprised if, like, she actually goes to, like, a trial and we hear evidence and it's conclusive. I really will be surprised. I really will be. Like, look, it's like there are some theories that I think are silly. Like, masks are a secret tool by Bill Gates to rule the world, or like the anything related to 9/11, right? Like, these are things that I think are silly. But on the other hand, I really do fundamentally believe that Jeffrey Epstein was murdered because people were too powerful and too important on his list of child sex clients.
Okay.
No.
Can you move it up a little bit? Because I think we... Okay. Oh, John Barlich with the super chat says, hey, Bree and Christo, the disco, it's your boy. Oh, thanks, John.
John, thank you so much. Always love the comments.
He's always good to bring a smile at.
Yeah, no, he's always great. It's great. He's great on the video comments, too. All these, like, nice little comments. John, thank you so much. Hope you're having a good one tonight. Thank you.
Okay, so Joseph Mangano says, so about that task force.
So Joseph, we could maybe hit it right now. I want to maybe just read this out to folks, because Biden and Bernie came out with their task force, and basically they talked about how to approach healthcare. And so what these task forces are doing is they're not necessarily going to end up being the policy, but are being proposed as a joint Bernie Biden platform, policy piece to the DNC for the convention and policy committees. And so Abdul El Sayed was on Bernie's committee, and he basically co-authored a report on Medicare for All with Micah Johnson. And so Bernie was his co-chair for this committee. Bernie was the co-chair for this committee. And so I feel like it's a good time to go over it now. And here's what he says, because I want to have a discussion about this a little bit. He says, Joe Biden isn't Bernie. He does not support Medicare for all. We deeply disagree on this, but he does support universal coverage. Guys, again, we're actually gonna have a discussion about this. But this is what he's writing. This is a Bernie person writing this. Expanding public coverage, reining in pharma and health equity, things we do agree on. Our task force recommendations build upon these aims. Our task force worked hard, and I'm grateful to the team and co-chairs, Pramila Jayapal, again, that was another Bernie supporter, she was on the committee, and Vivek Murthy, I don't know who they are, I'm guessing they're a Biden person. Didn't agree on everything, but we came to recommendations that will yield one of the most progressive Dem campaign platforms in history, though we have further yet to go. Here's some of the things they include. Basically, fully free COVID testing, treatment, and vaccines, regardless of your ability to pay and your immigration status. I think we can all agree that's good.
That's so basic, bitch.
Yeah, but that's good. I mean, that's Medicare for all for one thing. But, that's fine. We're going to rein in pharma's greed by finally allowing Medicare to negotiate for drugs for all Americans.
We already do that.
Using drug prices in other high-income countries to make sure Americans don't pay more. Basically,
like in Canada.
Yeah, comparing drug prices internationally. Ending big pharma's never-ending monopoly extensions. We build on see, nothing there. One thing they're clearly missing there, and this could have been a nod to Elizabeth Warren. One of the things Warren did have was, we're going to make a public company, and for any drug that's generic now, that we can that's not under exclusive patent, we're just gonna make for nonprofit to lower drug prices, right? We build on and expand Biden's public option to make it truly public, which is Medicare administered. So that's interesting. The Medicare public option from Biden will be within Medicare, so it won't be distinct from Medicare. At least that's the proposal. Cutting the costs of this public option in half. Automatic for low-income Americans. I'm not sure what that means. If it means free, it should be free for the poorest people. I mean, everything should be free. But if you're going to have, it should be free for the poorest. But I wonder if that means that you won't have to go through a big bureaucratic mess.
What does automatic and what does low income mean? Right?
Exactly. And inclusive of a zero deductible option. I'm guessing that means so you can avoid copays. But who knows how much that zero deductible option will cost. They're going to lower the Medicare age to 60. That's not impressive at all, because if you guys recall, Hillary Clinton wanted to lower the Medicare age to 55. And support holes in the program like vision, hearing, and dental coverage and long-term services and supports. We also expand Medicare access to people in states where GOP never expanded Medicaid. Well, I mean, that's interesting. That's an interesting one. It will help some people.
Okay, let's go see what people are saying or talk about this now.
Yeah, and so they have other things. We recommend the repeal of the Hyde Amendment, which is good, and codifying Roe as the law of the land to protect a woman's right to choose. That's key, so that you can't basically prevent public money from going to anything related to contraceptions or abortions. Yeah. Yeah. There's some stuff in there for mental health. He's saying it's the best plan America has ever had from healthcare. Bernie supporters are, by and large, not buying it. I don't know what people are thinking. I'm not sure. It's certainly better than what Biden was probably planning to offer. But there's a couple caveats. One, that's not necessarily going to be the platform. That's the Bernie Biden task force that will suggest things to the platform committee. Biden ultimately can adopt none of that. I'm sure he'll adopt some of it, but he can leave most of that on the cutting room floor, right? Yeah. Biden can also, for instance, just go totally against that. He can start taking suggestions from all the new Bush-era war criminals that have endorsed him on healthcare and on other policies. But on the other hand, I mean, there are some good things in there. There are some clear victories in terms of including the public option within Medicare, which will be important. So I don't know. I want to know what people think. We have some super chats to get through, but I'm still very skeptical. I'm not willing to call this a win, but I think it's I don't know. I think in some ways, at least even if only from an optics perspective, Joe Biden has done a much better job at including the Bernie wing than Hillary did.
Well, it's clearly an attempt by Biden to get Medicare for all people on board.
Yes,
they think this is better than nothing.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the attempt. Now, Bernie's most vocal online supporters, they're not buying it. But I wonder, the average Bernie voter, the average person that backed Bernie and supported Medicare for all, what do they think of this? And that's going to be interesting. Because those people are not, hardcore watch YouTube videos about Bernie day and night. They like Bernie, but they're not politicos, right? I want to know what they think about this.
Well, anyone who's not a politico is not going to be on this channel.
No, well, no, not on my. But I'm curious what people think they'll think. Let me grab a link to this thread just for people, because there's some more stuff I skipped over, but I want to give it to you guys, and you guys can take a read of it while we're here or after. I want to drop that link, and while I'm doing this, maybe I want to drop a link to the Discord. The Discord is still growing.
Am I on the Discord?
I don't know if you're on the Discord.
Do I know what a Discord is?
Probably not.
Is it a chat room?
It's basically like a chat room. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So what?
No. So I dropped that in the link, and so I think we have some more super chats to get to. Yeah.
Okay, Leslie Brown says, "Oh, microphone money for Brianna."
Well, Leslie, thank you.
Look at that.
Leslie,
those are my favorite comments ever.
Leslie, thank you so much for the very generous support. We continue to explore this option.
That's a lie.
And try to figure it out.
No.
I've wanted to do a lot of things with the space. For instance, I want to turn my desk this way.
No, that will not help.
No, but these are just things I want to do, so that way we can have a more, when I stream, because right now my computer's here.
That's so smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, but with the current pandemic, with the daycares closed, we've had limited time and stuff to do these sorts of things. But this is something we're looking at.
No.
It is something we're looking at.
No, it's not.
It is.
People offer to help him every single stream when someone brings this up, and not once has he taken people up on it. I mean, the man has a PhD, but he can't figure out how to wire a microphone. You've got to be kidding me.
Do you really think people with PhDs are renowned for their dexterity of knowledge?
Oh, you're a deep cut, aren't you?
Okay, what I'm going to do is as soon as this stream is done, I'm going to look up again how to figure this out and see if it's feasible given our space. That I will do.
Yeah. I wasn't even listening to what you're saying,
well,
so I can't even.
People who what, you not listening?
I'm not listening. I stopped listening after you said no. Clearly.
Yeah.
I didn't get what I want, so that's it.
People roasting me right now. Christo, the politician, speaking. Mm-hmm. All right, I'm getting roasted right now.
Move the desk before giving Brianna a mic. LOL. Yep. We continue to be exploring the option. Sounds like the Liberal Party.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least he's self-aware.
Yeah.
No, he's actually not self-aware. That's just really, really funny.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. PhD in wiring.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
Yeah. I mean. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's get to some more questions. Okay. But Leslie Brown, I really appreciate that, Leslie. Thank you so much.
Yes, it was,
hopefully one day people will be able to hear me better. Don't move the mic now, just because you've been called out.
But we're gonna figure it out.
Okay.
Wait.
How can I read?
Oh,
if
sorry.
You move the screen?
I was actually gonna look up, and then so people would know. I'm like, it's on my tab.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. The Rondain Haller report says, as much as I don't want Biden to be POTUS, I want the progressive policies to be one step closer to finally getting passed down the road when progressives finally take over all levels of government.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
well,
fair.
yeah, it's a great comment, and thank you for the support. No, I mean, it makes, look, again, I have in my community and within, progressives more broadly, people are divided. Some people are, very. I don't think I have anyone that wanted to vote for Joe Biden, who back in January before the primary vote started, they were like, "Oh God, I can't wait for President Joe Biden." Right? Like no one in my community was like that. Pretty much everyone was a Bernie supporter. Pretty much everyone. I'm sure I had a couple token Warren supporters or whatever, but pretty much everyone was a Bernie supporter. But now that the primary is essentially over, basically the debate is between some people who can't vote for Biden ideologically, personally, politically, historically. He's everything I stand against. Can't do it. And I get that. And I also get people who say, look, he will stop some of the things Trump is doing, some of the awful things Trump is doing, although not all of those awful things. And he might even get a couple little nice things done. And that may well be true. And I don't begrudge people for voting that way. And it may well be the case that electing a progressive or a Democratic president could help progressives. I'm torn on this. Back in 2016, the argument was, remember the argument, Trump being elected will expose the flaws of American capitalism and American society. It will tell people once and for all that the solution is not milquetoast neoliberalism because Clinton failed. That's what failed against Trump. But now socialism.
Are you
yeah.
sure, or is that just like rose-colored?
No. People thought
back?
this. People thought this.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people thought and not just like hardcore accelerationists, right? And so they were like, and then people will realize that the Obama years were broken, the Trump years are broken, and now we need something that's neither, and that was Bernie Sanders. But what happened actually is that Trump scared boomers and like older Democratic voters so much, and they disliked him so much that and they just wanted normalcy again, right? Whatever that means to them, right? They wanted normalcy, and so they looked and they said Biden's the one that can beat Trump. Whether or not that was the correct answer, right now it looks like it because Trump's doing such a bad job. And then they went with Biden. Even as state after state after state said they preferred Bernie's Green New Deal and Medicare for all, it was stop Trump 101. That was the whole course. And so what ended up happening is a very conservative, a far-right president winning actually pushed the Democratic Party electorate in broad terms, not on policy ideas, but on their electoral strategy, firmly back to the center. That's what it did. Bernie did worse this time in some ways than he did 4 years ago, right? Simple as that. Whereas we forget that Bernie Sanders rose to prominence after 8 years of Barack Obama. Bernie Sanders really didn't become known until 2015 to most people, 2015, 2016. He had been in Washington since the early 90s, but he was basically known to almost no one, except for very, very politically engaged people, right? Simple as that. And so, from my perspective, the way I see it, there may be opportunities for the Bernie wing of the Democratic Party and of American society to expose the contradictions of that society when Biden's in power as opposed to when Trump is in power. Because with Trump in power, everyone's focused on Trump. And I wonder if Biden, having the White House will actually force people to reckon with the fact that he's continuing a lot of Trump's policies, that he's breaking his promises, that he's launching coups in Venezuela and in Bolivia just like Trump would have, and on and on and on. And of course, some Democrats are going to be partisan hacks and defend it because it's a Democrat doing it, I guarantee you. But some people will be ignited. And we have to remember that Again, Bernie only rose at the end of Obama's presidency, when he was basically done. I wonder what Obama's election would have been like, his victory would have been like, if there was the level of left organization now that there was in 2008. Could have been different. What if there was an AOC and an Ilhan Omar and all these people with a Senator Bernie Sanders 10 years ago, 15 years ago, or 12 years ago, whatever. So I don't know. I can see opportunities on both ends.
Okay, do you want to put your screen back up so I can see the super chats?
Yeah. That's right
Okay.
there. Yeah.
So Sage and Fool with the super chat says, there's a lot of information available about the massive financial crisis hitting the globe and its impact on the U.S., but nothing about Canada. What can Canadians expect over the next 18 months? That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, there is things on Canada, but there's always less about Canada because, we're a smaller country and the U.S. cares about the U.S. and every other country does, whereas only Canadians generally care about Canada. I mean, there are some issues. Canada's got a very high unemployment rate right now. When some of that is obviously temporary, but how many of the jobs just won't come back? Yeah. We don't know yet, right? We don't know yet 100%. So that's going to be a big issue. Debt crises isn't that big of an issue. The deficit is going to be very high, and you're likely going to see conservatives especially, but many Justin Trudeau liberals make the argument that we need to practice austerity now and cut social services. But the reality is debt as a percentage of GDP, debt charges as a percentage of GDP are quite low because the interest rates are so low. So I'm not 100% convinced there's going to be a major financial crisis in Canada at the federal level, at least, in the short to medium term. Now, there will be discourse about there being a crisis, but I think that will be used by the Liberals and the Conservatives. Now, a question is at the provincial level, the provincial debt loads are higher. The provincial debt loads are higher, and they have less fiscal capacity. The federal government can borrow far easier and far more cheaply than the provincial governments can, even the larger ones. And so it is going to be interesting at the provincial and municipal level how they deal with this. So, for instance, cities in Canada, they depend largely on things like property tax. Mm-hmm. But if people are losing their homes, and if landlords, if people aren't able to pay rent, and I'm not sympathetic to landlords at all, but landlords are, if you rent from somebody, the landlord pays the property tax. I mean, I'm sure they take it out of your rent, but the landlord actually physically pays the property tax. But if the landlord's not getting the rent, and then therefore the city might not be getting the property tax,
it's more likely the landlord is just not going to pay the property.
Yeah, and so what you're seeing in some ways is cities really struggling. Cities are also struggling to maintain public transit. Public transit is suffering, and in places where public transit does generate a profit, and it does in some communities, like the cities have lost money because they're losing the transit profit. So transit starved. And municipal governments and provincial governments, I think, are struggling. And I think that's going to be a bigger question. What's the solution at the provincial level?
But that's all part of the symptom of downloading federal and provincial responsibilities onto municipalities.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, really, this is just a symptom of austerity going back decades.
Well, Canadian Dimension, go check out Canadian Dimension, guys. It's a great source. They had an article just out a couple days ago, which basically said, in a broad sense, Jean Chrétien, the prime minister in Canada from 1993 to about 2003, 2004. Yeah. And Paul Martin, who was briefly prime minister after him, but was his minister of finance. They basically created the situation where Canada's struggling right now because of their decision to enact harsh austerity and then download the consequences of that austerity to the provinces, who therefore downloaded it to the cities and towns and villages. And I think that's going to be a big issue. I think that's going to be a really big one, how the cities react.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
All right. Did you ask people to press the like button?
Oh, folks, if you guys can hit the like button, that's very helpful. If you want to share the stream with people on Facebook or Twitter or what have you, that also would be very helpful. Anything, to help spread the channel. As Mike Figueredo from the Humanist Report was noting on Twitter, it's very hard for independent news channels to get organic spread through YouTube. So, people through word of mouth and through letting their friends know is the best way to help, build left-wing news sources on YouTube. So, and so many of you, I've seen it. So many of you do a great job of that. I see you guys share my stuff on Facebook and Twitter, and I really appreciate that.
That's good. Okay. Yeah. David Molina says, who do you think would be the best VP for Biden?
Well, in terms of, there's a couple questions here. Like, who's he most likely to pick? Right now, I think it's Kamala Harris. But that's, of course, a very different question. Now, the best VP for Biden would, in terms of who do you think would help Biden implement his vision? Or that way it might be Harris, or certainly before this scandal, it might be someone like Amy Klobuchar, Gretchen Whitmer, who help him cover certain parts of the country that are very essential, that are relatively young, that have similar levels of moderateness to him. In terms of who I think would be the best VP, well, I mean, Bernie would be great, of course, but I actually don't disagree with Biden's idea to pick a woman. So I'm not one of these people that thinks it should still be Bernie, but, I think Nina Turner, whether it's her or not, Nina Turner made a great point that, she supports Biden's move to pick a woman president, right? But you have to remember that no progressive women are being included, right? Yeah. You have some that are slightly more progressive than others. Like, I'll say, for instance, that Kamala Harris is likely a little bit more progressive than Amy Klobuchar. She's worked with Bernie more in the Senate than Amy has, right? I think Klobuchar or Kamala Harris is a bit disingenuous, but she was the first person in the Senate. Again, you could think it was just politics. It probably was. She was the first person in the Senate to co-sponsor Bernie's Medicare for All bill back in 2019. Mm-hmm. And so she's probably she's probably more progressive in that sense. But Barbara Lee's not being considered. And you might say, okay, well, she's a bit older, but Barbara Lee would be a solid move, an African-American woman, a long history in the party, she was the only one, who voted against the Afghanistan war. Mm-hmm. There was a small group of people, Bernie included, who voted against Iraq.
Who was that, Tammy?
No, Barbara Lee.
Oh, Barbara Lee.
Barbara Lee. And so, she was the only one to vote against Afghanistan. And she got a lot of heat for that, right? And then, as time as Bernie himself said, I was wrong, Barbara was right, and she deserves this credit for this fantastic legacy of being the one to stand against a war that was very difficult. That one, almost everyone supported that one, right? Almost everyone supported that one. In retrospect, it was a bad idea, but at the time, a lot of people supported it, right? So, yeah, I would like to see a progressive woman, someone like Nina Turner or Barbara Lee or someone like that, but it's not going to happen. I think what's going to happen, and it's not a bad pick for Biden, it's going to be Kamala Harris. Now, some people are saying Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren would be, out of the plausible choices, like the people that are being considered, the person I think would be the least bad. But I have doubts he's going to pick her, and I've noted these before. She's also in her 70s.
She's older.
Yeah, she's also in her 70s. Biden being in his late 70s, essentially, and he's going to be above 80 when his term is over. I think there's some people that are going to want some youth. And so a lot of the people being considered, like Kamala Harris is in her 50s, right? I think that's a factor. Elizabeth Warren also being white, I think, is a factor. Biden hasn't committed to picking a woman of color, but a lot of people are asking for it. A lot of people are also saying Warren is still too to the left for Biden. She ultimately betrayed Bernie during the primary, but the fact of the matter is she still backs a wealth tax, still has, positions that maybe make her a little bit too concerning to the richest Americans, the Democratic Party elite donor base. And also, she's from New England, and they don't need help there. And she finished third in her own state, right? She finished third in her own state. What kind of support can she bring in that region? I mean, what state is competitive there that Warren would help in? Like New Hampshire? Maybe? Like Maine? Does Warren help in Maine? I don't think she helps in Maine. So I think it's gonna be Harris, guys. Val Demings is somebody I've heard a little bit about. Keisha Lance Bottoms, but I think it's gonna be Kamala Harris. That's what I think. That's really what I think.
That's where the bets are, right?
Yeah, that's where the bet. Well, actually, let's look it up right now. Last week we looked this up, and then let's look it up.
Oh, is that Hillary Clinton?
Yeah.
Oh, she looks awful.
Wait, Bree saw Hillary pop up. I don't even know what that was. Hillary's probably doing something awful. Okay, so we're gonna look this up here. Okay,
Yeah, same.
So if anything, here's what the odds were to I don't know what it's compared to.
Susan Rice is up a lot.
Okay, so here's the odds now. Here are the women at 2 cents or above. So basically the way this works, I'll throw a link in the description here. Let me throw a link here, and we'll go over this. So this is what they're looking at here. And this is somebody I forgot to mention. And it's kind of good because it's an important talking point. These are the higher the number, essentially it's a loose percentage, right? Like, will this person be the nominee? And it's like a betting market thing. And what the betting market is saying is that these are the women at 2 cents and above. You mean at 1 cent, you have a bunch of random people, including some men, in case he decides to change his mind. Nina Turner is at 1 cent. But really, anybody on the list is at 1. You really start to get into the potential contenders at 2. Gretchen Whitmer and Stacey Abrams are at 2. Whitmer's the governor of Michigan. Stacey Abrams should be the governor of Georgia, but, she was cheated out of that election. But I don't think either of them are going to get it. Stacey Abrams got a lot of play early on, but I wonder if there's just something about her that didn't click.
They can't even get a nice picture of her.
Yeah.
Like, that's so awful.
Yeah, and so, Keisha Lance Bottoms is the mayor of Atlanta. So like Stacey Abrams,
sick right now.
Yeah, who has COVID-19, unless I'm mistaken. She has it. Luann Grisham, she is, I believe, a senator from like New Hampshire or what have you. I know she's being considered, but I don't know how much in play she's going to be. Michelle Obama is at 5 cents, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think that if Michelle Obama wanted the job,
she would have
already gotten it.
Yeah.
But she doesn't want it. Then you have Elizabeth Warren at 6. Again, I think she's in a decent position. That puts her in 5th overall. But she's kind of been stagnant. And I think that really shows that there's not a whole lot of belief that she fits enough boxes for Biden. Then you start getting into the contenders, I think. You have Val Demings at 9 cents. She's down 1, but there's not been a lot of movement. She's a congresswoman from Florida in the House. And like Kamala Harris, she has a law enforcement background, although she was a literal cop instead of a prosecutor. Tammy Duckworth is the veteran. It's the one Tucker Carlson's been attacking. She lost her legs in Afghanistan or Iraq. I forget which one. Smokey might be on the screen right now, guys. I can't see. Yeah, he's definitely on the screen. And then Susan Rice was a former backroom figure in the Obama government. I believe was she Attorney General, Susan Rice? I forget her role. but she was, what was Susan Rice again? Let me look this up. I believe she was attorney,
Ambassador to the United Nations.
She was ambassador to the United Nations, but she held more than that one role. She was Secretary of State. So she is there kind of playing an important role too. So, and then Kamala Harris, guys, if to look at this, is more than double Susan Rice. So if you look, the top 4 women right now are all racialized. They're all racialized. They're all relatively young women. And I think that's a big factor. And I think Susan Rice is somebody that's a bit interesting. On the one hand, she doesn't really have any political experience. She's a diplomat. Like
she's a civil servant.
Yeah.
High level civil servant.
And I get why she's very qualified in her professional accomplishments, but I don't know if this is if he's going to pick her. But on the other hand, if Biden really wants to lean into the Obama resurgence, who better than to pick a woman that served in a very, very high ranking position under Obama? One of the most important jobs is Secretary of State. It's not like she was like Secretary of, I don't know. I don't want to make fun of a secretary position, but it's not like she was like a secretary of the national parks or what have you. She was, secretary.
Nature conservation is very important.
It's very important.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, I think it's going to be Harris.
Okay. Are you ready for the next question?
Yeah. Some people are saying Smoky 2020.
Yeah. I saw that. Okay. Scroll up one. Okay. Ronald 6, Wilson 6, Reagan. Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
6 says, it's funny that Trumpers are spreading anti-vaxxer nonsense about Bill Gates when it's the Bush GOP that pulled Microsoft out of the antitrust fire.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because like all of these billionaires, they might not support the Republican Party, but they're all like the kind of capitalists that they should love. And it's so fascinating that like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos and George Soros are like the enemies of these conservatives when at the end of the day, these men are crushing unions in some cases. Bill Gates loves charter schools. Like these men are conservatives. They are. They might not be social conservatives in all cases, but these men
but they're not progressive.
Are not at all a threat to the Republican order. They might back the Democrats and they might lead to a President Biden maybe, but like when these people calm down and realize like what Biden's gonna do, they should think, oh my God, nothing really is going to fundamentally change, and like I'll get to live my life as I've lived it. Right? And so I don't get the paranoia about Bill Gates. I don't get it. I do not get it. I don't know. I don't know why they the left, it's like the I get it, like liberals, they hate their billionaires and conservatives hate their billionaires. It's almost like, except for socialists, because we don't like billionaires. Like the liberals and conservatives, they almost like treat billionaires like a sports team. So it's like the Koch brothers are the Koch brother now, because one of them died. They're the good billionaires for conservatives, but then you got Jeff Bezos. You have all these liberals that are like, oh, I hope Jeff Bezos serves in Joe Biden's cabinet. And I'm like, my God, that's
why?
Because they love him, because they love Amazon. They did a poll, and they asked people, like, by party or by ideological, like, identification, what you believe and what you trust, who you trust. And, like, Amazon was one of the most trusted things by people who are Democrats.
Why?
Because they love Amazon.
Because they love their packages being delivered to their door?
Yeah,
like,
and Jeff Bezos.
By drones?
Jeff Bezos.
The fact that Amazon doesn't pay any taxes?
Because Jeff Bezos doesn't like Donald Trump and Donald Trump doesn't like Jeff Bezos. And because Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post and they like the Washington Post. Full credit, I've written for the Washington Post at least 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
Just a disclosure.
Well, no more of that.
No more.
They do pay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They actually pay their writers, which is rarer than you would think. And they pay fairly.
Yeah. The Surfs Times just showed up. Is that the Surfs?
That is the Surfs. Hey, comrades, the Surf Time, everybody. The Surfs are here. They're great. This is the Surf's second channel. Be sure to go to the Surf's time. If you just caught, well, I'll pull it up here. Surf's.
You didn't spell any of that right.
Yeah, well, it auto-corrected. This should work. Okay, I'll drop a link in the description. There we go. So this is the Surf's second channel where they kind of like they clip from their Twitch streams and play them there. They're great. Looking forward to working with the Surfs. Lance and I from the Surfs are going to be doing something in the near future. I am coming closer. In fact, I tentatively have a schedule to record my podcast with another creator next week. But Lance and I also want to maybe look at doing something monthly, whether it's a podcast or maybe something on one of our channels. You know, I want to do more collaboration with other left YouTubers and podcasters and creators. Because if we're going to grow our communities, the YouTube algorithm isn't going to help us, at least not most of the time. Mm-hmm. So we need to do it. We need to work at it. You know, that's great. So do check them out. And they're on Twitch, but I'm sure once you get to that link, all their links to their other sites and stuff will be there.
Okay. Are you ready for the next question?
Yeah, the Surf Times says, make me a mod, Christo. I'll keep you safe from Canadian Nazis. All right. Well, I mean, we could always we're adding a new moderator. There it is. The Surf Times is now a moderator. We actually this streams we've been relatively troll free tonight. The ones where we get a lot of trolls are when we cover a debate. Like we do a post-debate analysis, we'll get a ton of trolls. And during the Canadian election, we got so many PPC trolls. It's like the PPC got what, like 2% of the vote. It must mean like every one of their voters is an internet troll. Like
something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Ready for the next question?
Yes.
Okay. So Maria Vanguard, thank you for your support. Says, what is Brianna's favorite band? Oh, I don't know. This is embarrassing, probably.
Well, Brianna's favorite musician, the person probably Cardi B.
It's Taylor Swift.
Brie loves Taylor Swift and Cardi B.
I like some Cardi B. I know like 3 of her songs, but could like the person who I like know the most music.
This is why he's not allowed behind the computer.
Well, or you could clean your desk.
Yeah. You guys might have heard that Smokey knocked something down. Yeah.
Yeah. It's probably Taylor Swift.
Yeah. Taylor Swift would be a good one. Like more accurately, like Brie listens to a lot of Cardi B. But if you were like, if there was one concert you could go to, you'd go to Taylor Swift. Yeah. And it doesn't hurt that Cardi B was also a big Bernie backer. That was.
Well, none of that hurts.
No.
Okay. All right. Can you move the?
Yeah.
It up a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Aspie for Peace says Kingston avoided a major breakout. Of course, he means of COVID-19.
Yeah.
Phase 3 when, and then he also asked what we think of the mayor and if the emergency order would last for the rest of the year from Doug Ford.
Yeah. Ask me. Thanks for those questions. Well, first, the mayor. We're not fans of Brian Patterson. He's not the worst mayor in the world.
He's at least a good chair.
Yeah, he's good at running his meetings.
He can run a meeting. He's
competent at like the formal job of mayoring, but ideologically we're in opposition to him. Yeah. He's a conservative. We are socialists.
Yeah.
We supported in the last mayoral election in Kingston. We supported Rob. Hutchinson. Mm-hmm. He was great. Obviously, he didn't win, but no one came close to beating him. He finished third. And we support our progressive city councilors in Kingston. In terms of the
emergency order.
I can't. Yeah, I can't speculate too much. But I'm guessing the emergency order is going to be gradually reduced. And so what I would say is it's going to look different by December, but it's not going to be over. So for instance, I don't think by December you'll be seeing Raptors games or Leaf games or TFC games, all of which still play in December, in open stadiums. I don't think that's going to happen. But will you see restaurants being able to serve people inside in December? Maybe. Will schools be reopened and daycares open? Yes, but maybe with restrictions. These are all things. Will universities be back? A lot of them won't be, but some of them will be on restrictions. And in terms of Kingston, yeah, we were lucky with the outbreak, not getting it. But the fact of the matter is that we still have to be careful. We still have to be careful. For those who don't know, there was a potential massive outbreak in Kingston because there was a nail salon where people weren't practicing social distancing. And there was rumors. I don't know if this is true or not. Was it true, the bus rumor? There was a bus from people coming down from Toronto.
I don't know.
And somebody on the bus had COVID. We did have an outbreak, but not a major one. And it led to a big jump in testing. Bree and I actually, we don't live too far from one of the testing centers in the city, and normally you can't see lineups. Yeah. And that for the day or two after that, they were literally lined up around the block.
A 4-hour wait.
Like a 4-hour wait for testing. Whereas in Kingston, I'm thinking you can get them on demand, probably again now.
Yep.
So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was crazy. Okay, Leslie Brown with a super chat. Thank you so much, Leslie. Says, I saw Green Party candidate Howie Hawkins on the Humanist Report and Rising. There's a post on his Twitter that he and his VP will go on your podcast or your YouTube show. Just saying. Does she mean you?
Well, I mean, Leslie, that's great to hear. And thank you for the support again. I mean, if she means my specific channel, let me know. Send me a link to that, people on Twitter. I'd be happy to speak with Howie Hawkins and the Greens in the United States. But if he means in general, I mean, I'll certainly look into reaching out to him and seeing if we can find schedules that work.
Well, after this, go look up his
Twitter.
And
we'll certainly check that out. I'd love to talk to him about issues that matter in the United States. The question about third parties. I'm not sure where I stand. I mean, I think in some ways, maybe the path forward, at least at the national level, is through primarying within the Democratic Party. So I don't know if Howie would disagree with me there. I'm guessing he would. But I certainly think that the Green Party in the United States, not the Green Party in Canada, I don't support them. I support the NDP in Canada. But the Green Party in the United States has a role to play. And I do hope they win more local seats and build that capacity. And so, I'd be happy to talk to them.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning that. That's very interesting.
The Surf Times saying, I'm already drunk with power. Don't abuse that power, Lance. All the other moderators have been very kind with their power. Yeah.
Okay. Ready for the next one?
Yeah.
Okay. John Barlich says, did you hear about the president of Brazil?
Yes. So for those who don't know, Jair Bolsonaro, the awful, evil, awful president of Brazil, got the Rona.
Really couldn't come up with another descriptor than awful twice in a row?
Well, look.
PhD?
Look.
Okay.
The deleterious president of Brazil.
That's better.
Yeah. He got the Rona. He got the Rona. And look, I don't wish the Rona on anyone. What I will say, though, is that there's a certain justice in someone like Bolsonaro getting the Rona. Because he's failed his country. He set his country up for a situation in which the most vulnerable people in a very unequal country are getting sick. It's like Donald Trump, right? Whether you want him to personally get it or not, leaders that have failed, there's a certain karmic justice in them getting it. And Boris Johnson got it, and Trump and Bolsonaro have done an even worse job than him. So I think there's a justice in him getting it. He, even on a personal level, actually I saw it today, I think, on the Surfs on their stream. I had it on just when one of my videos was rendering. And they had a clip of Bolsonaro, or an article where Bolsonaro called men that wear masks fairies. And I'm thinking he might have used some other more ugly slurs that I'm not going to use here. But he basically used, homophobic language, hateful language to men who wear masks. And so he's like, I'm a big, manly, tough guy. I don't need them. I'm strong. I'm tough. And so, look, there is a certain karmic justice in him getting it. There is. Will he learn anything from it? There's not a goddamn chance.
He'll probably be like, it's pneumonia.
He'll probably, because if he dies from it, then he dies. But like, if he lives, he's gonna be like, I beat the Rona. You can all beat it too if you're big and strong like me.
That machismo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you put your chat down so I can see what people are saying? No, your chat.
No. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ronald 6, Wilson 6, Reagan 6 says, European countries, France with Paris, Germany, Brazil, and Germany with Brazil, Berlin and Hamburg, Spain with Madrid, often give their major cities a constitutional status analogous to a Canadian province. Should Canada follow suit?
Whew, that's
kind of like Toronto wanting its own city-state power.
Exactly. That's exactly what Ronald's talking about. So basically, for those who don't know, in Canada, the way it works is that municipalities are actually very weak, like constitutionally. Mm-hmm. Even big cities, even cities like Toronto, which have more people than like 7 or like 6 out of the provinces on their own, right? Like Toronto on its own has more people than the entire Atlantic Canadian provinces. It's a massive city in terms of population. And yet, it has no actual legal power. The provinces have almost total autocratic power over cities. So for instance, Doug Ford, without input into Toronto City Council, was able to just eliminate half the city council seats, basically.
That was such a terrible abuse of power.
And he did it immediately without consultation and blah, 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 blah. But even with all that consultation, he could do that. And there was nothing wrong with what he did constitutionally. Mm-hmm. Cities, Doug Ford tomorrow could dissolve Toronto if he wanted, right? Yes. He could do it. But so a lot of people are saying...
Or force amalgamation.
Or force amalgamation, which is what Mike Harris did, or break apart cities or what have you. They could do anything. And so there's this debate about what role this should have. Should municipalities have greater protections, and should there be constitutional reforms? Or at the very least, should there be legislation, which again would still depend on the province? Should there be legislation for some of the larger cities to give them distinct status?
Mm-hmm. Ronald said Canadian municipalities are legal fictions created by Canadian provinces.
Exactly. They are basically legal fictions. They're creatures of the province, I believe is the one of the terminologies. And so, special legislation to address the fact that these cities are large and complex might be something to support. For those out west, I believe Vancouver has some of that legislation. Now, it's not constitutional protection, but they're the only city, I believe, in Canada that has like a piece of legislation that marks it as sort of not at the level of a province, but more than the other municipalities around it. And I mean, look, on the one hand, I kind of feel like where do you draw the line? Which cities get that? Obviously Toronto and probably Montreal, but
there probably needs to be a population standard or a tax base that you draw from, right?
Yeah, but so Ottawa, would Ottawa be included? It's complicated because it's the national capital, but is Hamilton big enough? What about Quebec City? Mm-hmm. What about Halifax in Nova Scotia? It's a small city.
But what about the cultural importance of the region?
What about Winnipeg? Winnipeg, in terms of its size in relation to the province, is massive, right? And so I don't know. I actually don't know what I think on this. I really don't know. But I do think it is fair for municipalities to demand, I don't know how we get there, greater protections from the whims of the provinces. That's going to require constitutional reform, though. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be very tricky.
And then you do have to balance the right of smaller municipalities as well.
Well, exactly, right? Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So John Barlich says, do you think there will be a democratic civil war when Joe Biden is elected?
Like in the party?
Do you think there'll be, I think he's asking, do you think there'll be a splintering of the party?
I don't know. Not immediately, no. I think what'll happen at first is there's going to be at least a little bit of time where people are going to breathe a sigh of relief that Trump is gone. And that includes me. Look, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'd rather have Biden than Trump. I don't know if I would vote for Biden if I was in the U.S. I might vote third party, but I certainly would be happy to see Trump lose. And so there's going to be a brief, even if it's only from the time that until Biden's inauguration. There's going to be a brief honeymoon, but I do think you're going to see these fights happen in the party. And I think you're going to see, or I hope you see, that people like AOC, Jamal Bowman, Mondaire Jones, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, all of these people, that they really bring the heat. And that Bernie Sanders it continues to be a fighter in the Senate. And even maybe Elizabeth Warren, if she's not fully roped in, maybe she can actually offer some criticism, because I think that's going to be important to see. Biden's going to need to be held to account from the left. There's going to need to be massive protests. No going back to brunch, guys. It's got to be massive protests.
Oh, that was such bad.
No, he needs to get protests like Trump did. He needs to, immediately, for Medicare for all. As soon as he starts doing bad stuff, which I'm guessing he's going to do on day one, we have to start protesting him. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That was a really good question. Matthew Daniels. Oh, we haven't seen Matthew in a while. It's nice that he's back. Matthew Daniels.
Yes, good to see Matthew.
With this super chat says, Surfs/Christo TikTok when?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I've thought about starting a TikTok, but I haven't gotten around to it.
You were gonna use the name Grandpa Christo, right?
Maybe, I don't know. Like I'm an old man, right? So I don't know. Like I am an old man for TikTok, and so I don't know. And then everyone's like, well, what about the Chinese spyware? So I don't know. I have to look into it. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do about a TikTok, but I might start a TikTok. In terms of the Surfs collab, I mean, we're always happy to do it. One challenge now is that it was easier for me to go on the Surfs before because their stream time worked out really well, but with my work schedule. But now that's a time where Dimitrios is up and awake during their traditional live stream time, so makes it a little bit trickier to go on their stream. But I'm sure we'll find some time to work.
Well, this won't be forever.
Yeah. But the Surfs also notes, P.S. Christo, I was just interviewed by the Humanist Report today, and he gave you a shout-out. That's great to hear. I'm looking forward to that. Humanist Report is really good. For those who don't remember, I filled in for Mike just after Super Tuesday, and it was a really great experience. And a lot of people came over from that. So Mike's one of the nicest people on YouTube, and do go check out the Humanist Report. Although I'm sure a lot of you know who he is. So, and that's great. I look forward to seeing that interview.
Okay. Chase Lucas with the super chat says, just wanted to give a shout out to Alberta NDP, former Minister of Advanced Education, Marilyn Schmidt, for celebrating Margaret Thatcher's death in legislature today.
Okay, I'm going to look this one up because I hadn't seen this. Let me see.
Marlin. Oh, I think I said Martin.
Yeah.
Marlin.
Let me look this up. Okay, let's see. Okay, so this is 2 hours ago, Western Standard Online. I don't know what this is. Wait. It might be a right-wing source, but we're going to read it here. So he said, an Edmonton NDP MLA is being slammed for mocking the death of the Iron Lady, former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. Quote, I can still go on to enjoy the fact that Margaret Thatcher is dead. The only thing I regret about Margaret Thatcher's death is that it happened probably 30 years too late, said Martin Schmidt, MLA for Edmonton Gold Bar in the legislature Wednesday afternoon. Well,
she did like busting strikes, so,
yeah.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah, so I'm going to go and retweet this. This is awesome.
Okay, not in the middle of your
stream. Yeah.
Please.
So if you guys go to my Twitter, you'll see a link to the actual video. That's great. That's great. Chase, thanks for pointing that out. Thanks for the support. Love to see it. You love to see it. Margaret Thatcher was a monster. She was an absolute monster.
Not according to Tom Mulcair.
Not according to Tom Mulcair. My God. My God. But no, absolute monster. Great to see that. A couple other things. There was an NDP, Alberta NDP, former MP, I think, former MLA, shared something by the Communist Party, and the UCP was flipping out, but we were actually all like, that's pretty cool, actually. Good, left-wing solidarity to read from the different sects, and that was nice to see. And also, there's another interesting thing. I'll just briefly talk about it. The McLean's, not really a left-wing source, more of like a center-right-ish source. But they put out an interesting article by Rick Smith from the Broadbent Institute, talking about how AOC and these people are kind of building an NDP in the United States in the sense that they're building like an NDP wing of the Democratic Party. And that was kind of an interesting read. Yeah.
That's funny. Is there any more if you scroll down?
Nope, that's the last super chat.
Okay, so we had, it wasn't a question, but Lisa Hildebrandt earlier on in the chat asked about if we had signed up for the Jagmeet cooking class. Just said it was really good.
We didn't actually. Although Lisa, you were the one that I believe we had a commitment, but you were the one that pointed it out to me, Lisa. I think I saw it on your Twitter actually, or I believe I saw an email for it, but then I was on Twitter right away and I saw that. It looked really cool. For those who don't know, Jagmeet Singh as a fundraiser did a like a Zoom or like live stream cooking thing. What did he make? Again, Lisa, and how and what was it like? Did it look good? Did you cook along? Was it delicious? Let us know.
It looked really good. She didn't say what it was.
Oh, okay.
I think it was supposed to be like a curry or something.
Yeah, let us know what it was. I mean, I think that's really cool.
Okay, and then I can't remember if it was Daft Tracks or if it was somebody else was asking about the political compass test.
Oh yes, yeah. So if you truth be told. I forgot. But we're already having a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. So, next week, we're going to do the political compass test.
And we're going to do mine live or we're going to do yours live?
I'm not sure. Which one do you want to do?
I thought we were going to do that blocky one.
Yeah, but
the
okay.
One with the blocks on it.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. But we're going to do the political compass live next week. One thing, some people are asking, how often do I do the streams? I do the streams every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Pretty much the only time we've missed one is once when I was sick and we didn't do it on Christmas, which I think is reasonable. But we do them every Wednesday night, and sometimes I'll do an emergency stream for a debate or for if there's some crazy stuff happening. I might do an emergency live stream, just hop on and talk about what's happening. Just, because it's happening so quick. It's quicker for me to do that than make a video. We might do that sometimes. And that's basically what we do. I don't list them because algorithmically, YouTube hammers you if you leave up your live streams. That's been my experience, but they're unlisted. So if you ever miss it, you can still watch it. You can find the link in the Discord or on my Twitter or Facebook. And if you can't find it, send me a note and I'll give you the link. And so you can still watch them afterwards. It's just they're not. You can't see them on YouTube.
Okay.
We might be able to do them both live.
Do you think?
Yeah, we might be able to do them both live.
Okay, I'd be down for that.
Yeah, so we're definitely do that. We're definitely doing the political compass next week. That'll be a good time to do it. There was a lot happening this week, to be fair, too, so I feel like we're covering it.
Okay. And guys, if particularly those in the Discord, you can remind Christo so he doesn't forget, because this really isn't my thing, and I don't remind him. Yeah. So he might need a little bit of help.
Yeah, we got some new people in the Discord. I'll drop the link again. Always cool to have new people in the Discord. There's always really good debate. It's a small Discord, but people are really active in it, so it's nice. It's nice. One thing we didn't really talk about it all that much, but I wanted to kind of bring it up, this Tucker Carlson thing, guys.
Okay, wait. I want to go to bed.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm gonna go. You're scrolled all the way down to the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want water?
Yeah. Actually.
You have water?
Well, yeah, but I could always use more water.
It's literally full.
Cool.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Okay. Good night. Everyone say bye to Bree. But no, I wanted to just touch on this again because this Tucker Carlson thing, guys, we talked about it briefly, but my God, is this guy mask off? This guy is mask off. I worry about, I worry about 8 years from now, everyone being President Trump wasn't great, but he was way better than President Carlson. This guy is bright, he's eloquent, he's shrewd, and he's an open white nationalist, with one of the most popular TV shows, like, in America. Right? This man is more than anybody else, more than anyone else on Fox News, more than anyone else on mainstream media, even more than in some ways some of the big right-wing YouTubers. Like, he's more white nationalist than, like, Ben Shapiro, right? Like last night and throughout this whole thing, he's going on these rants about how, you know, these people are taking our country away from us. These people are almost always black people or racialized people. They include the left. He includes white leftists. But it's almost always invariably... Oh, do you want the monitor, sweetheart?
Pardon?
The monitor? It invariably includes, like, the left and people of color. And so when the statues were coming down, it was all about how these people are destroying our heritage. Well, whose heritage, Tucker? The people who built this country. Well, who built this country? Because I guarantee you, Tucker Carlson doesn't mean the indigenous people whose land was stolen and who played an integral part in the country. And he doesn't mean the African Americans who, by force in many cases, built a country against their will. And he probably doesn't even mean all the racialized immigrants that have been most immigrants since the 1960s and 70s that have built the country. He means, like, white, old stock Americans, right? He put this up. I'm like I don't know if, like, he put this up. It's the thumbnail to this video where he had a picture of Ilhan Omar wearing her hijab and a picture of Tammy Duckworth, and she's a woman of color as well, you know. And he says here, we have to fight to preserve our nation and heritage. Now, what does that remind you of, guys? Get a couple super chats here. David Molina says to Bree, here's a little something for Bree's microphone. And John Barlett says, bye-bye, Bree. So, John, thanks, guys. Bree said, guys, thanks. Yeah, guys, Tucker Carlson is way more dangerous than Alex Jones. When was the last time you saw Alex Jones on your Twitter feed or on your Facebook feed or, like, come up on a YouTube video organically? Like, he's still around. He probably still has a very large audience. Don't get me wrong. But Alex Jones is marginal. He is marginal. You have to go out and look for Alex Jones to see Alex Jones. But fundamentally, this is, like, Tucker Carlson's everywhere. He's absolutely everywhere. 100%. Like, you cannot get away from Tucker Carlson. And so he's saying, you know, these things here. We have to fight to preserve our nation, our heritage. Yeah, people are saying, like, what does it remind you of? And you're 100% right. It reminds you of the German movement from the 1930s. Do you guys, like, a lot of people were noting on Twitter, that it reminds them of the 14 words. Now, if you don't know what the 14 words are, the 14 words is a famous, like, white nationalist, white supremacist, like, slogan. And so here's a link to it right here. I'll drop a link in the description. And you can see, for those who maybe don't know. Well, it's the 14 words. And so what it is here it's a reference to the most popular white supremacist slogan in the world. Here it is. We must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. And that is very, very similar in theme and in tone to what Tucker Carlson says. And what Tucker Carlson will often say. He'll say, these are people who come to our country, who are disloyal, who are unpatriotic, and they are trying to steal this country from us and our children. And so what he's saying is, we have a right to fight and preserve our heritage. fight for our heritage. Right? That's what he's saying. And so it's not even really a dog whistle, guys. It's like, I think I said this, Kyle Kalinske said this too. Like, it's a foghorn. Like, he doesn't even feel the need to whistle anymore. Right? Like, they're like the far right. On the one hand, Trump is clear. Like, again, nothing's guaranteed. And it would not shock me if Biden blows this. But the polls are far better for Biden than they were for Clinton right now. They really are. Like, we could be skeptical. We should be. But, like, Biden's in a damn good polling position right now. Texas is in play. Texas. So, on the one hand, the right is clearly in trouble electorally, but I've never seen them so bold from a discourse perspective. Never. Right? Never. So, like, somebody noted a cotton Carlson presidency would be awful. Yeah, you're right. That would be very awful. Again, because it's like the saving grace of Trump is his incompetence, his inexperience, his general lack of intellect. Right? Right? And so because he was incompetent, he probably got less bad things done than he normally would have. So imagine if imagine if Tom Cotton won in 2016. Or if just Mike Pence was president. If Mike Pence was president and some other random Republican was the president. It would be far worse. Far worse. So yeah, again, I said this at the beginning. Like, Tammy Duckworth served the country and gave up her legs for it. Again, I'm not one of these people who's like, oh, automatically all veterans are good people, blah, blah, blah. I'm not one of those people. But, like, I don't think you should question the patriotism of someone like Tammy Duckworth. And neither should you question the patriotism of most immigrants. Because immigrants choose the country. Immigrants choose the country. Whether it's via refugee status or whatever, like, they come to you. It's not easy to come to America or Canada or like a G7 country. These countries don't just take everyone that wants to come. People who come to these countries and are extremely, extremely patriotic for the most part. And they're critical of the downsides to these countries, but they often do it from a place of love and a place of, they had this ideal of the country and the country isn't meeting the ideal. And so their goal is to make the country better to meet the ideals so that it'll be a better place for them and their children. So when I look at someone like Ilhan Omar, I see a very patriotic person. I see a person that says the supposed value of America is that everyone has equal opportunity. But that doesn't exist because of racism and capitalism and fundamental, political and social and economic inequality. And so I want to build the America that America portrays itself as, and that requires fundamental reform. Right? I don't know. So, yeah, Tucker Carlson's a monster, guys. And this is the thing. People got to stop, and I'm not one of these, like left-wing commentators. We got to stop sharing Tucker Carlson, saying, oh, Tucker sort of agrees with our point because he'll throw a bone to the white working class or whatnot. Like this guy is a direct and mortal enemy to anyone on the left because he stands against all of our values. And no more playing around about Tucker Carlson. Right? No more playing around about him. A few things here. CMT63 has become a member of the channel. That's great to see. Thank you so much, CMT. That's very, very happy to have that support. A lot of people support the channel through one-off donations, whether it's through PayPal. Some people send Iraqi transfers. Some people, of course, you give super chats. All very appreciated. But some folks also make more ongoing support. So whether it's here on YouTube or via Patreon, I very much appreciate that as well. Among other things, I put your name in the description. and make sure that you at the end of every one of my videos, I quickly play the list of all the people that help make this channel happen. And again, with progressive channels that want to cover controversial topics, it's hard sometimes to get those videos monetized. They'll get demonetized. And so the support of my patrons and members here on YouTube help to make that content. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. John Bartlett says, a true patriot call out their country BS, not kiss its ass. John, it's perfect. It's perfectly put. Like somebody that loves their country. And I wouldn't say like, I'm not like a Canada rah-rah guy, but I would say I'm like somebody who like, insofar as, I acknowledge Canada as a fundamentally flawed settler colonial state, especially when I was growing up and younger, I was like, I'm proud to be Canadian. But I was always very critical about inequality, about the suffering in Canada, about the treatment of Indigenous peoples and other minorities. And I don't think that makes you less of a Canadian. I really don't. I really don't. I think that makes you a better citizen and a better patriot. And instead of just being a mindless automaton for the status quo, which couches itself as patriotism, which of course I don't think is in any way accurate, right? Leslie says, are you guys Tim Black Wolfpack fans? Love his channel. Leslie, again, thank you so much for the support and the question. I'm a fan of Tim Black. I mean, I don't watch him every day. There's so much content, but I have watched Tim Black more than a few times. He does great work. He's fantastic. You can catch him here on YouTube. But I believe YouTube's not even his biggest platform, I don't think. I think he has a whole bunch of different platforms. So, definitely check out Tim Black. He does a great job on so many stories, and I often go for him because he has an important perspective on progressive issues that's sort of underrepresented on YouTube especially. So yeah, Tim's great. Tim's great. Ronald Wilson Reagan, great points about immigrants. Converts to a religion are almost inevitably more devout than people born into it. Yeah, I've heard that argument. I mean, that's a different philosophy too. Some religions, for instance, don't do child baptism because they feel like that you should make it by choice. Whereas I come from the Greek Orthodox church, where babies get baptized very, very young. I don't know if you guys have been seeing it. Have you guys been seeing the pictures of the baptisms now? The baptisms where the baby, for social distancing, they're squirting the babies with the toy guns. Have you guys seen that? The pictures. Let me see if I find it. Water gun baptism. Yeah. Here's just the Google image. Wait, I'll just find you one here. This is one of the more common ones. This is one of the more common ones. So you're seeing this from a lot of Catholic and Orthodox. Some of these churches, they're doing these baptisms, which is copy. This should. Let me see if I can get this up here. Yeah, I think it's pretty funny. This one's really funny because it really looks. This one's really funny because it really looks like the priest is he's aiming to kill. He's not. He's just you know what I mean? Yeah, basically nerfing a baby with water. And I'm not making this up. If you Google search, just water gun baptism, and you'll see it. You'll see tons of people doing it. It's not just this one. There's other churches that have done it as well. Well, that was the thing, right? When one of the things where my channel blew up with a lot of hate was when Don Cherry, who is a hockey commentator here in Canada, most Americans, you might not have heard about him, although he did go on Tucker Carlson when this was happening, and I covered that. Back in November, I believe this happened. So you can go back to the channel in November. You could see all these videos. And, Don Cherry basically said, "Oh, these people come to our country for the milk and honey, and they don't wear the poppy on Remembrance Day. Here in Canada, like in Britain, we wear the poppy. A lot of us do, but a lot of people don't. Sometimes for political reasons, sometimes because and they just don't wear it." And he was saying it's the newcomers in the big cities. They don't like our country. They want our milk and honey. They want our jobs and our money, but they don't want to be loyal Canadians. But the white folk, he didn't say white, but he implied the white folks in the small towns, they're the loyal, patriotic Canadians. They sign up for the military. They wear the poppy. And so the implication was immigrants are disloyal and ungrateful, which of course is not the case. CMT says, with the super chat says, I just joined and I should have done it earlier because I've been watching you for a while and I know that you care about what is happening here in the USA. Thank you. CMT, thank you so much for the support. Look, don't worry about it. For one, better late than never, of course, but, I understand fundamentally that during the best of times, that during, even before this all happened and people started losing work, that, a lot of people don't have extra money. And the kind of people, not to stereotype, but many of the people that care about the issues I care about are not necessarily millionaires. So I get that for a lot of people, they don't have a lot of extra money. And so I fully understand people give what they can. But, one thing that, I appreciate is when people share money. But even if you can't, the big thing you could do is just check out my videos, right? Share them around. Share them on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, what have you. That's how, is the best way you can help a channel. That momentum really helps. It's a great way to help the channel. Yeah, Vaudry says, we put a poppy on some of our quarters. And your FBI thought they were spy coins. Yeah. Some of our quarters had a poppy on them. Our quarters are silver coins. No color on them. But the poppy was this little red part on it. Apparently it caused some issue. It was kind of funny. I mean, look, in Canada we have this debate every year. Some people think the poppy represents, honoring war. A lot of people think it honors the sacrifice veterans and of all those who gave their lives in the First World War in particular, because that's where the tradition emanates, but in all Canadian conflicts. Some people in Canada will wear a white poppy, which symbolizes simultaneously the sacrifices of veterans gone by, but also a commitment to never again have war. But the white poppy is controversial in some places. Wearing the white poppy will sometimes have people be very aggressive to you. Some people wear both. They'll wear a red poppy and a white poppy. So, these are things. Another thing with the poppy, and this is because Canada, like the United States, doesn't take care of its veterans. One of the reasons the poppy is a big fundraiser for some of the veteran groups. So they basically sell the poppy, and it's sort of I don't know if there's a set price or you give what you can, but basically for the end of October to Remembrance Day, basically, you'll see veterans and supporters of veterans outside all these stores everywhere selling the poppy. And it's a big, big, big fundraiser for these groups. So a lot of people, give for that reason too. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't judge anybody for wearing a red poppy. I don't judge anybody. No, I'm not one of these people. I'm not like, oh, you wear a red poppy, you're a stooge for the, imperialist capitalist war of 1914. No. Full respect to anybody who chooses to wear a poppy or not wear a poppy or wear the white one or the red one or both. 100%. No big deal. And look, I mean, honestly, I don't even think about it personally. Last year when this happened, it's I didn't wear a poppy, but then I thought about it. It's well, at the time, I wasn't teaching. I worked from home I worked from home most of the time, still, even before the pandemic. I don't go, I was I didn't really go out a whole lot. So I didn't wear the poppy. You know what I mean? So, Oh, Dafrax says, sound like him saying poppies. Well, that was unintentional. That was unintentional. No, there are some young people here. Nice, I'm not the only high school student here. There are some young people here. It's good to see people of all ages. My channel actually has some good age balance. Not a whole lot of people in their teenage years. I will say that not a whole lot of people, in their teens watch my content. But I do have a decent amount of folks, from all of the other age brackets. Like, if you look at, like, I can just take a quick look at my analytics over the last 28 days. The smallest group of my viewers were people 18 to 24. And they were about 8.5% of my viewers. And the biggest group, though, was 25 to 34, which makes sense because I fit in that group, with about 24.6. But that means that, like, no one group absolutely dominates. Even people above 65 are about 10% of my viewership. So I have a good spread of viewers. I have a good spread of viewers on the channel. It's a little bit. It's probably pretty balanced for a political channel. Well, I don't know if people are all kind of placing bets on whether they're the oldest. I don't know about, so, like, the YouTube basically gives these categories 13 to 17, of which I basically have no viewers, very, very few. 18 to 24 is then 25 to 34, 35 to 44, 45 to 54, 55 to 64, and then 65 plus is how they determine it. Is how they determine the groups. My gender balance is not as much. Not as much. I have more male viewers than I have female viewers. It depends on the month. I think for the most part, my core audience is more men than women. And so what happens is that when I have a video that does very well, when I have a particularly good month, I'll have a better gender balance. But when I have a more average to a weaker month, I have more men. Because I think a lot of the people who watch every day are men. So right now, in the last 28 days, about 30% of my audience was women. I don't know if that's good or bad for political channels. I'm not sure. So I think, so Brandon's saying it's about 90%. It is, mine's not quite that much. So maybe 30% is actually pretty good. I think I do okay because I don't find my content too aggressive. I'm not, I believe, I see myself as somebody who believes in intersectionality. So, I don't ignore, issues of gender, and, I talk about women in politics, sometimes critically, but sometimes positively. So it doesn't surprise me that some women would watch me. I don't think it's a thirst trap, but, I think some people watch. I think some people watch. Like, I'm not sure how the gender, I don't know, like if any of the big, I don't know if anybody's ever said it. Like, I don't know if David Dole or Mike Figueredo or if they have data on their gender splits, but I wonder if they'd be similar. Well, yeah, we're not like an edgy channel, right? Like, we're not an edgy channel. I don't think we are. Like, we cover some things like the Karen story. Like, we cover that, but, like, we're not an edgy channel. We're not like, like with, we're not gonna, just go hard at Crystal Ball here necessarily. I don't think that's the point of this stream. But I mean, she does some good stuff. And in terms of her ability to to communicate some progressive ideas effectively and concisely. She does a very good job. Crystal Ball was very, very, very good when she would go on MSNBC, like during the primaries. I don't know if you guys heard that, but there was when during the primary cycle, especially when Bernie was starting to really rack up some wins and he was polling very well, Crystal Ball was fantastic on MSNBC, pushing back against the neoliberal narratives, bringing like a Bernie perspective. She was clearly the sharpest one on all the panels. On her own show, though, see, I get the point of the show. I get it. I get the point is, neither of these people represent the mainstream, right? And so it's like, it's a show about alternative politics, but not just from the left. You have somebody who's alternative on the right and someone who's alternative on the left. But like, yeah, Sager's views sometimes are extremely troubling, and I feel Crystal Ball needs to push back more. And I get her criticism of identity politics. I get it. But I think she sometimes could be clearer in saying, just because I reject identity politics doesn't mean that identity doesn't matter. Those are different. Rejecting liberal identity politics means rejecting the, like, half of prison guards and police officers should be women. Right? But we have to remember that, like, left-wing, like, socialists, Bernie Sanders has always been an SJW. Like, this argument that is like, oh, Bernie's better than Pelosi and these types because he's not an SJW. No, that's BS. Bernie's always been an SJW. A dirty, rotten identity politics SJW. If you're using that definition. Bernie Sanders was marching in pride parades when it was politically liable and dangerous. Still not safe today, don't get me wrong. But dangerous everywhere to march in a pride parade. Bernie was always the one talking about racial justice. Bernie was always the one telling little girls, don't let anyone tell you you can't be president. Bernie was always the one talking about the rights of prisoners, of all these people. Bernie's the social justice person. Exactly, right? So this argument that is like, oh, Bernie's a rejection of that wokeism. No, Bernie's always been far more woke than everybody else. No one's more woke than Bernie, at least not of any of the people running for president. The difference is Bernie means it. So what I have a criticism of Crystal Ball, like I have like criticism. I feel again, people are right. She should push back against Sagar more, but is how she conflates being quote unquote woke with being performatively woke. And that's, I think, the difference. Right? Like, that's the difference. Performativism versus genuine wokeism, if you will. Being an SJW in the sense that it's good for marketing versus actually standing up for like an intersectional politics that includes class. And so, for instance, and no, Bernie's not perfect. There are issues that Bernie has needed to evolve on. Even Bernie doesn't want to defund the police. Bernie's wrong. He's wrong there. The left isn't a cult. We'll tell Bernie when he's wrong. We tell him. He's wrong. Bernie's wrong, but Bernie's ahead of the curve 99% of the time. And so, when Crystal Ball says we gotta end this like woke politics, either she means that like Bernie's wokeism is bad, or maybe she means, Nancy Pelosi kneeling in a kente cloth rather than actually doing something for black people getting gunned down by police. That's what we gotta end. And sometimes I feel like she's not clear enough in making that distinction. Now, I hope it's because, it's just, not everyone's a perfect communicator, but my concern is that maybe she's conflating the two on purpose. I mean, Vouch is. I mean, I haven't watched him as much. He's having a meteoric rise on YouTube. I don't know if you guys have been seeing that. Guy's account's growing faster than anyone's. I don't agree with a lot of his takes. I do think he likes a good fight. I'm less combative, but I think some of his critiques of Rising and the assumptions of it are fair. Well, Jamal, part of Bernie's argument, yeah, Bernie certainly doesn't want to abolish, but Bernie's argument does it, like Bernie, for instance, his solution is to still put more money in police departments, right? Like, he still wants more money for police departments. He feels that, if you put more money into police departments and training and stuff, you can fix some of the issues. And I don't know if that's necessarily the argument from a lot of the younger progressives. And so that just shows that, and not to say that, there aren't old folks that want to support defund the police. There are. But Bernie is, he's a bit old school sometimes, so he's not going to get it all right. But, oh, well, yeah, no, Joe Biden doesn't come close to Bernie at all. No, God, no. God, no. God, no. No, well, I mean, none of them did. None of them came close to Bernie. The other candidates that were somewhat better, like Warren even, she didn't even come close to Bernie. Leslie says, right-wing and corporate Democrat views aren't opinions, they're moral failings. Well, to be fair, Leslie, and thank you for your support, I don't know if I would go quite so far. I think they are opinions, and a lot of them can be moral failings. I think, the left has to have an open discussion about these things, because there are some opinions that are very toxic. And, they're opinions, and people have these views, but, to what extent can we associate with them? And when people start talking about openly, corporate, fascistic-leaning policies, you start to get wary. And, there's a question there. Dieter asks how much the price of insulin is in Canada. It depends on where you are. It's significantly cheaper than the U.S., but the argument should be in Canada, and we need to have it more, is that insulin shouldn't cost anything. And that's actually a thing in Canada a lot of people don't know in the States, is that we don't have, our Medicare for All doesn't include medicine. And so it's a fundamental issue that in Canada, you can go to the doctor and get a prescription for free and get seen by the doctor for free, but then the prescription the doctor has given you, you can't afford to fill. Can't afford it. You don't have workplace insurance. Or you do, but you can't afford the copay. And so it's a big issue in Canada. Now, insulin availability isn't, I think, as big an issue, because insulin is very cheap in Canada, or at least affordable. But 1 million Canadians a year, which is the equivalent of 10 million Americans a year, go without medicine. Have to choose between medicine and some other fundamental need, like paying their rent or paying their utilities. And it's estimated that thousands of Canadians a year die because of this, in addition to the fact that about 4 to 6 million Canadians, or 4 to 60 million Americans, go without dental care. That's another issue. Dafrak says, check out the Cavernacle. He's in England and covers different topics like history and media. I've seen a couple of Cabernacle's videos, and I've seen them posted on BreadTube, the subreddit, which is a great subreddit that sort of just people can post left-wing, broadly defined videos. Some of them are about politics, like my own. Some of them are about culture or history or music or film reviews. Some of them about video games. It's cool. It's really cool. You'll see some of the big names there, like Philosophy Tube and ContraPoints and H Bomber Guy and Lindsay Ellis. But then you'll also see, smaller creators like myself and others. It's great. It's a great subreddit. Melanie said, I stopped watching Rising when Bernie suspended. That was an actual thing. I mean, I'm not sure what their numbers are like. But, I know that after Bernie dropped out, a lot of channels, took a hit. a lot of people stopped watching, or at least stopped watching as much, because I think a lot of folks, frankly, were just sort of tired, right? They were really tired with all the political analysis. A lot of people were sort of demoralized by what happened, and I think it was a big concern. It was a big concern. For a lot of us. So I don't know if like people stopped watching Rising because outside of her Bernie takes, people didn't like Crystal Ball. I know for a lot of my people said, look, I just needed a few weeks to not watch politics. And I totally get that. Audiences have been picking up at least a little bit, so that's good to see. But I understand that. You might say Crystal Ball's good, I guess, but I really only want her for her Bernie takes, but I like, say, Mike Figueredo or David Dole. I like them on bigger issues, so I don't mind sticking around. I can see that. I have heard of Three Arrows and Dafrak saying you're a big name in my heart. Well, Dafrak, thank you so much. That means a lot to me. It's like on YouTube, everything's relative, right? Like, there are people who have reached out to me and said, I love your content, and they're excited to hear from me because I'm a big creator to them. And then there's obviously people like I've worked with, whether it's the Humanist Report or whether it's David Dole, and I'm always so excited to work with them because their accounts are like 10 or more than 10 times bigger than mine. And then, I'm sure that whenever they get to talk to the Young Turks or Kyle Kalinske, are like, well, man, they're even bigger than them, right? So there's levels everywhere, every way up the chart. Samantha Sider says, Trump trying to send kids back to school, insane. No, you're 100% right. In Canada, even, there's a real debate about how they're going to get kids back to school. Like most parts of Canada, school starts the day after Labor Day. Like the Tuesday, usually it's that first Tuesday of after Labor Day that they'll start school, and and that'll be the start of the school year. So early September, for the most of Canada. So that we're less than 2 months away now from that. And there's a whole lot of debates. They're thinking in Ontario maybe they might stagger the classes to go back. So kids will go back 1 week, and then their classmates will go back the next. And so each class will be half size for the first month or two to test it. Our son's daycare has not reopened yet. It's reopening gradually. It'll start, I think it's reopening in early August, but it'll be opening under partial capacity. So Canada's being cautious, but the thing is that we have far less cases than you guys do. Total and per capita, and Canada's curve, it's not gone, and a second wave could happen, but Canada's curve is flat, and we have lots of ICU capacity. You guys don't have that. Right? Like, yeah, I have, yeah. We don't have you guys don't have those luxuries. In most of the country, you guys are having your biggest cases now, right, in the States. And so unless things drastically get under control, and the only way that happens is another full shutdown. Like, things gotta shut down like they did in New York everywhere for at least a few weeks. At least, say, 3-4 weeks. There's no way it's going to be safe to open schools. There's no way. And the only reason they're doing it is because you can't open the economy while daycares and schools are closed. Children have to be sacrificed because they can't just sit at home. Young children can't be left at home. So you're going to open up the schools. You're going to force children back into the schools. They want to do it with no restrictions. Kids are going to go back because parents are going to go back because companies are going to start opening up again, and it's going to be awful. Absolutely awful. Absolutely awful. He wants America. Like, look, right now Trump is desperate. Trump played this so badly. If Trump would have given a better stimulus package to regular voters and he would have done a full shutdown, he would have absolutely gotten heat. He would have absolutely gotten heat from conservatives. He would have gotten all of that hate and vitriol. But I guarantee you that he would be in a better position. Americans would have, like in Canada, they would have understood the severity, and the U.S. would be ready to start opening soon. And so Trump could then say, look, we had a sacrifice, we're reopening, and then the economy would start roaring again in September, October. And I think if Trump plays this right, he's president again. But he screwed it, and I think Trump's going to lose. I do. I think he's going to lose, not because Biden deserves to be president. Biden is the luckiest man ever that, like, he got to just continuously fail upwards. But mark my words, Trump is just doing this because he realizes the only chance he has to win is to create an economic recovery, right? He wants a V-shaped recovery where it's like you have the sharp decline because of the closes and the shock effect, and then a sharp upturn when everyone goes back to work. And that can't happen with schools closed. And that's what it's about. 100% what it's about. So he's willing to risk their lives. He's willing to risk the lives of children. And even if you argue children are relatively non-susceptible to this, which seems to be the case, although not without any risk, you're putting anybody those children come into contact with at risk. Grandparents, parents, teachers, and that's what it's going to be. Yeah, in some of these states that are getting hit hard, some of them are swing states. Florida, it's going to help Biden, certainly. Texas, he has got a chance. California, not a swing state, but yeah, it's getting hit hard. I mean, this is like the red states are getting hit quite a bit harder. There's been some stuff that I've seen, but what I will say is, even in states that voted for Hillary, even in blue states, the curve isn't flattening. So this is an American issue too. I don't want to make this all about Trump. There's a whole bunch of factors here that even with a Democratic president, things still go badly. Like local officials are failing. The lack of a universal single-payer healthcare system means that a lot of people are scared to go to the doctor and face a bill. No matter what people promise, they don't trust that they'll not end up being bankrupted. This is a major issue. It's a major issue. John Barlich asks, he said with the super chat, he says, what is the difference between progressives and socialists? Well, part of it is, I think, a semantic difference, and maybe some of it is like scholarly or analytically different. So what I mean by the first point is, a lot of people call themselves progressives when what they mean to say is either social democrats or democratic socialists, but progressive seems less aggressive and more inclusive, right? It seems like it can include more people. It might also mean that it includes everyone left of the neoliberal Democrats. So, progressives include democratic socialists, but maybe people like, say, Ro Khanna, who I don't think is a democratic socialist, but is progressive, right? So there's part of that. In political terms, a socialist is somebody who believes fundamentally in the working class through various means controlling the means of production. Through worker ownership, through state ownership, through cooperative ownership. The balance of all those things help determine often which type of socialist you are. More anarchist, more grassroots socialists would say almost everything has to be owned at the local level by the workers in the community. Whereas more of a Fabian socialist might say, look, we need central planning and we need regional planning. And some of the ownership of key industry doesn't have to just be by workers. The governments can own things. But whereas progressives were more interested in social programs and things like that. So in some ways, you might say progressives sound more like social democrats, whereas socialists are more like democratic socialists. So I don't know. It depends on the type of discourse you're having. In academia, progressivism versus socialism are different ideologies. Socialism was more associated with Eugene Debs, whereas progressivism was associated with a lot of people who in the late early 1900s were fighting for better labor laws, better education for children, taxes on the rich, and things like that. So, like, important reforms, but not necessarily the radical change that Eugene Debs was talking about. Canadian 98 says, do you think it would be a good idea for the NDP to change their name to the Progressive Party? I mean, that's an interesting question. Every once in a while it comes up that the NDP should change its name. It used to be called the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation. But that name changed for a bunch of reasons, one of which was that it was really hard to translate into French. And so they called it the New Party as a draft name. It was just the New Party. And then at the convention, they kept it and they added the word Democratic, the New Democratic Party. And that's what they called it. But a lot of people wanted to call it the Socialist Party or the Labor Party or the Social Democratic Party. I'm not sure. I don't know if I would personally use progressive as a name. One, there used to be a party in Canada called the Progressive Party. Some of those people ended up becoming founders in the CCF though. So there's roots there, but I would say I would want a more descriptive name, but I wouldn't pick Progressive Party, personally. Comrade Internet says, Etobicoke just got hit with a mini tornado. Etobicoke, for people who don't know, is sort of a... let me look this up. Etobicoke is a community sort of in the... It's sort of in the north-ish, west part of Toronto, but it's a fairly large community, actually. North, kind of, it's sort of close to Pearson Airport, sort of. It's part of like the broader suburbia, sort of in between Toronto and Mississauga, and apparently they got a mini tornado. That's interesting. So in the United States, you guys had a progressive party, and it played a role in certain areas. And I believe in one of the elections, Lafayette, I don't know how you guys, sometimes Americans will pronounce French names different, but Lafayette won the state in a presidential election. He was a congressman from that state. And it was one of the few times that a state was won by a non-Democrat or Republican. And he won it under the Progressive Party. And so those people were less socialist than Eugene Debs, but they were far more left-leaning than the Democrats. So in very broad terms, I would say in the center, you center-right, whatever, you have liberals. Then moving to the left, you have progressives. Then you have socialists. But that's just that's just like a very informal thing. Dieter says, how many credible parties do you have in Canada? We have 5 to 7. Well, in Canada, it depends on the region, at the level. So at the provincial level, it depends on the province. There are some provinces that are effectively two-party provinces. And then there are other provinces that have many parties. And then some of the parties that are strong provincially only exist provincially or are only strong provincially, or vice versa. So for instance, in some provinces like Newfoundland, they have 3 parties basically. They have the Liberals, the Conservatives, and the NDP. In other provinces like Quebec, they actually have viable as in parties I think either have a seat or could reasonably win one. They have multiple. They have the CAQ, they have the Liberal Party, they have the Parti Québécois, they have Québec Solidaire. They have multiple parties in that system. Federally in Canada, I would say we are in terms of viable parties, not necessarily parties that can win the whole election, but viable parties, we have 5. We have the Liberals, which are a center-right party. Liberals will disagree with me and say they're center-left, but we have a center-right Liberal Party. We have, which govern right now under Justin Trudeau. We have a center-right to right, depending on the time and the wing of the party, Conservative Party, currently led by Andrew Scheer, but they're going through a leadership race right now. They're in second place. Then in third place in terms of seats, but not votes, you have the Bloc Québécois, which only run for seats in Quebec and are not so much right now, but historically have been a separatist party, but they're basically a Quebec interest party. They run to represent the interests of Quebec, and so they win seats for Quebec and for Quebec's interests. Then fourth in seats, but third in votes, you have the NDP. They are center left to left, depending on the issue and on the MP and on history. And they are, that's the party I support. They're the party most akin to what a party would look like if AOC and Bernie and Ilhan Omar and all these people had their own party instead of being in the Democrats. Sort of like that. And then you also have the Green Party. They're the smallest party that has seats, and they have 3 seats, and they are anywhere from center left to center right, depending on the issue. And they're very different. Like, unlike the U.S. Green Party, which is more left wing, the Canadian Green Party is more of a green capitalist party. And so on some issues, they're similar to the NDP, and on other issues, they actually might be more with the Conservatives. So those are the 5 viable parties. One party that sort of was the PPC, the People's Party of Canada. It was a right to far right party in Canada in the last election, but its leader couldn't win his seat. But they had a chance. So but those are the 5 viable parties. Those are the 5 viable parties. Kate's saying they love when I talk Canadian politics. Actually, next week, I've been talking about doing a Canadian politics podcast, but it's been crazy. The person I want to do it with has been going through stuff. They may or may not have gotten the Rona like a month ago. We don't know. They were really sick, but not sick enough to go get tested, and they weren't at a category. And then with daycares closed, it's crazy. I am doing something of a Canadian podcast. It's a type of thing I want to do. A lot of people I know came to this channel for Canadian content, but it's just, when I made Canadian videos, they got like 400 views sometimes, 500 views. Sometimes better. And it's just, if I want to build a YouTube channel that has viability, I need to mostly focus on American content. I just don't have a big enough channel to do that, right? So I want to make Canadian content, and I feel a podcast is a better venue for it. That's what I feel. So that is something I'm working on. And we do want to make it a podcast. We're going to try to strike that narrow balance. Maybe we'll fail, of making it not boring for Canadians, but accessible to Americans. So we want to do that. We're not sure if we're going to succeed at that. Yeah, the PPC. Well, here's the thing about the PPC. Let me actually forget what the actual election ended up being. Okay. You guys might have lost me there. My stream thing disconnected for a second. So apologies if that happened. But I am still here. In that last election, the PPC got about 1.62% of the vote. But in some of the polls, they were polling as high as 3 or 4. And there was a hope they could win their leader seat. Their leader used to be a conservative and actually came very close to winning the conservative leadership, but was basically forced out of the party over some of the issues he's taken and the positions he's taken. Yeah, so that's definitely something I want to do. That's 100% something I want to do. I think it'll be really good to see. I don't know what model we'll make it work on. We might try to do a lot of podcasts work on, like, to monetize it would work on a, like, 1 week free, 1 week you have it for patrons only. On this channel, I don't make content for patrons specifically. It's just, I want to produce content for everyone. I have perks for patrons, but, I won't actually come out, right? So, again, my stream thing here is sort of choppy a little bit, but we're almost, I'll keep an eye on it. So. Yeah, I mean, Sandy and Nora are great. Vaudra, I don't know if I would classify Sandy and Nora as to the left of me. I think they have a different vision of politics than I do. And I don't even think we disagree that much. People will associate me by the fact that I'm a supporter of the NDP as meaning that I am not as far to the left as people who identify as to the left of the NDP. But I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I see my politics as very stridently on the left. I just see the manifestation of those politics in Canada requiring the NDP, right? That's my vision. My vision is to pull the NDP to the left, and much like the labor movement, however flawed, needs to exist for the betterment of Canadians, my view of the NDP is much the same. Canada without the NDP is a fundamentally worse place, even if the NDP is not the party that always represents my views. Jugmeat, for instance, is wrong on BDS. He should say he supports BDS, but he doesn't. He's wrong, though. He is. So, I mean, I don't know if I don't know. Maybe they are to some degree, but I think fundamentally we have similar views. Bliss Monkey says, Christo's proportional representation dead in Canada. It failed twice here in BC, the second time quite miserably. Federal Liberals have abandoned it. It seems to a certain degree a little dormant now, unfortunately. Although in BC, I will note that one of the times it failed because of the BS 60% threshold. And in PEI, when they had a vote on it, it succeeded. The Liberals ignored it. And then in another referendum, they were able to defeat it. But they set it up in a way that it had to get both it had to win the popular vote and also win in a majority of the province's ridings, creating a situation where it likely wouldn't win. So it had to win twice. It had to basically, to get proportional representation in PEI, it had to win a proportional election and then win a first-past-the-post election. It was rigged from the start. Quebec, I was hopeful in Quebec because the CAQ formed a deal with the Parti Québécois and Québec Solidaire to implement electoral reform. And after they won their election, they actually said they were going to do it, and without a referendum. But apparently, behind the scenes, the party revolted against François Legault for wanting to keep his promise. That's what I heard. And so they backed off and they said, well, we're going to do a referendum. And the type of electoral reform they're offering is kind of bad because it requires, for instance, you get a minimum 10% to get a seat. That's too high for me. So, for instance, in a lot of proportional systems, there's a threshold clause. So in Canada, we have 338 seats in our parliament, right? So if you do the math, in a purely proportional system, which isn't being proposed in Canada, but in a purely proportional system, if there's 338 seats, right, you would only need to get 0.002% of the vote, I believe. Or more accurately, you would only need to get about 0.3% of the vote to get one seat. So put another way, if you got 1% of the vote, you would get 3 seats and almost 4 seats. But what the system does often is it puts a 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5% threshold, saying that if your party can't get 5%, then you don't get proportional access. You have to be, we will support small parties, but not fringe parties. So the CAQ, looks to be trying to back down from that promise as well. So that's definitely something. So right now it seems a bit dormant, but it's never going to fully go away. Well, John says, hey, I'm going to go. John, thanks so much for your support. Great to have you here tonight. Thank you for all your great questions and comments. Yeah, typical Canadian says, the NDP and Greens would have more under PR, the Bloc less. Well, it depends. Because the way PR works, we have to remember, in Canada, any proportional system still has to work within provincial boundaries. It can't work federally. You can't divide seats proportionally federally, because to do so would likely require constitutional reform. Because provinces are entitled to a certain minimum amount of seats, and it likely would require reform. So what would happen is it would be proportional based on your vote in Quebec. So the Parti Québécois, or the Bloc Québécois, could still have a good base of support in Quebec based on their support in Quebec. So it's not like they would only get 8% of the seats, nationally. They could still get a haul in Quebec. But yes, it would likely benefit the NDP and the Greens would benefit under the current their vote totals. The Conservatives are actually right about where they need to be, give or take a little bit, and the Liberals would have lost seats. And so, but of course, people might vote differently under a proportional system. Some parties might splinter. The PPC does probably win seats under a proportional model because some Conservatives didn't vote for them because they didn't want to split their vote. Maybe even some smaller regional parties form in provinces to win seats. We don't know. We're not sure. All right, so guys, it's about 10:20. Usually we wrap up between 10:15, 10:30. I am going to wrap up. This was fantastic. I want to thank you all for your generosity tonight and your great questions, your great comments. Thank you for everyone who showed up. Other creators like the Surfs Times were here. It was great to see. Fantastic. I just want to let you guys know that I very much appreciate it. Again, if you want to support the channel, one of the things you can do no matter what is just, share the videos, watch them, go check them out. The Biden video I put up earlier today didn't do that great. If you guys want to go give that one a watch, if you haven't watched that one, go check that out. I don't know why people didn't like that one, but go check that video out. As always, it really does help the channel. It really does help the content get more views. And of course, if you have the ability, you can also support things via Patreon. But I fully understand if people are in a tricky position. But as always, I do these every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock till about 10:30 or so. If you, I might always do additional live streams, so I'll let you guys know with as much notice as I can. Before some people go, one more reminder, there's the Discord, and also I'm going to drop a link to my Twitter. Most of you probably who are on Twitter follow me on Twitter, but in case you don't, give me a follow on Twitter. You can see what I'm thinking about politics there. And I do tweet about Canada more than I make YouTube videos about Canada. So check me out on Facebook, on Discord and on Twitter, and I will see you guys soon. Have a good one. Stay safe, and I'll see you next week.